Here's the problem.
After 40 years of making such beloved games, Nintendo has spawned a following of apostles who worship the company with religious dedication.
Oh no,
it's not
the Nintendo adults!
To simply engage with the
it's
products.
like a Disney adult, but the same! Hey there, guy. I just wanted to let you know there, guy, you're a dog, Luigi?
Because you're a dog, Luigi. Woof.
Woof! He's a dog, Luigi! What the hell? That was not what I was expecting, but that works. We're reacting to another EmpLemon video, dude. The freaking go. If you haven't seen my previous reaction, I reacted to a home movie video he did. Roll the clip. Hey there, guy. Is this thing recording? Is this... Are we good? Is this in... Hey there, guy. Oh, no. Marker. We gotta act me. I saw XQC react to this guy.
You're a dog, Luigi.
This one is about Nintendo. It's a little bit old, but it's about the sacrifices of the Church of Nintendo. It sounds interesting. Luigi's a dog.
In my last video, I talked about The Wizard of Oz, a work of art so beloved that it overshadowed the horrifying gauntlet of trauma endured by its cast and crew.
Whoa, that sounds interesting.
Generation single-handedly carried the film industry on its back. Decades later, you could have said the same thing.
What does MGM stand for? Nintendo Game Machine? That's the origin story? I'll shut up.
About Nintendo and the video game industry. In 1983, the US video game market crashed. In just 2 years, industry revenue had plummeted by more than 95%.
There it goes!
Games manufacturer was forced to bury more than 700,000 unsold cartridges in a New Mexico landfill. The state of the...
They had to bury them in a landfill. They printed too much ET, and this smut had to go. You could have just gave me a couple of them. I would have taken them. Am I right, guys?
The games manufacturer was forced to bury more than 700,000 unsold cartridges in a New Mexico landfill.
That's
the state
crazy.
Of the video game industry was in shambles.
Some Breaking Bad shit in there. What is this clip, dude?
Providing ample opportunity for one Japanese company to pick up the pieces.
Super Mario Brothers, Shin Hatsubai.
Super Mario 64, LeBron James.
Scream if you love
Super Mario 64.
Dude, I have that duck hunt thingy somewhere.
By a mystical company from a faraway land. Many fans of gaming have come to see it as a miracle. By 1988, the NES accounted for a 70% share of the video game market, and the industry was poised for its most prosperous period yet. Nintendo inherited the exalted title, the savior of video games. Now, nearly 40 years and 6 consoles later, the worship is far from over.
Sacrifices of the Church of Nintendo, praise be to the Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Mario walked so Mario could run. I mean, he's not done running, but Freddy run faster. Freddy got fingered. Mario never did that.
Where are we going? To Neverland. Neverland. You'll never grow up there.
Modern-day disciples of Nintendo
span
a variety of denominations. Together, they form one of the most loyal followings for any brand in the world. However, despite the daily outpouring of reverence and adoration Nintendo receives from its fans, the sentiment is far from mutual. Recently, it's been quite the opposite. In fact, the past 20 years have shown us that Nintendo's most passionate supporters often wind up becoming their most forsaken. Last year, I posted a video about Hungry Docs and competitive Melee. It's a video that features many layers of conflict, one of which was Nintendo's antagonistic relationship with competitive Smash.
True, don't they, like, hate the competitive scene for some reason to the point where they, like, put features in the game that, like, fuck up the competition? For, like, no other reason, like tripping or something? I don't even know much about it.
Super Smash Bros. Was never designed to be anything other than a party game, but developer intentions wouldn't stop some players from reinventing the game in their own vision. The rushed development of Melee led to a series of engine exploits which pushed the skill ceiling of the game to the limits of human ability.
But it was so frame perfect, I felt like literally an explosion in my hand.
These unique mechanics transformed the game into a competitive spectacle, and one of the first video games in America showcased.
And we couldn't have that anymore. Because when I said you're supposed to brawl, I meant just for fun. Not actually get upset, or make $5 grand.
Melee Nintendo wasn't on board with the idea of their game being played competitively at all. Lead developer Masahiro Sakurai...
They usually are the most hard-headed company about anything. They wouldn't let people do Let's Plays for the longest time without freaking... They just wouldn't. They made their own, like, MCN. It was a whole debacle. So you had to decide if you wanted to sell your whole soul to Nintendo and let them take a portion of your whole channel, or just not cover their stuff at all. But now you can, finally, which is cool. Better late than never.
Of the series.
No contest!
Melee's defining mechanics were neutered, if not outright removed, in its sequel. A deliberate design...
I want to be neutered, if not outright removed.
...by the developers who feared that Melee's competitiveness was intimidating new players. Considering that Melee was the best-selling game on its system, it's tough to justify...
It's Melee, dude.
...that wave dashing had any effect on casual players' reception
towards the franchise. Where's the A? You're making it up.
Of gaming,
You
it's very
sound
unusual for the skill
crazy.
ceiling of a game to actually affect the enjoyment of new players. Even games as simple as Tetris and chess see highly competitive top players utilizing extremely advanced strategy, yet they remain two of the most played games in history. In Melee, the competitive community at the time only represented a minuscule fraction of the total players, and it's very likely that the vast majority of Nintendo's customers didn't even know they existed. The company's insistence on specifically punishing competitive play is truly bizarre, and possibly unprecedented among the entire industry.
Yeah, they're just dumb,
In the
I
end, though,
think.
dynamic and nuanced play was sacrificed to appease the casual player base who in all likelihood would have still enjoyed the game regardless. Removing competitive techniques from future titles is one thing, but deliberately sabotaging competitors from enjoying an existing game is a whole other level of petty.
Yeah.
MLG's original run with Melee ended after 2006, but it was originally supposed to continue into 2007 and beyond. The organization was allegedly pressured by Nintendo to drop Melee from its pro circuit so as to not interfere with the release of Brawl.
Jeez.
While other esports at the time were beginning to prosper, competitive Melee was subject to a dark age that would persist until 2013, when the community raised enough money to earn a spot at EVO. Of course, Nintendo infamously tried to revoke EVO's rights to stream the event, a decision so unpopular that they were forced to back down less than 24 hours later. This incident has been heavily publicized, but it wasn't the first time Nintendo tried to black out a Smash tournament. In 2010, MLG hosted their one and only tournament for Brawl, a tournament that was never seen by anyone outside of the venue. Nintendo refused to allow MLG to stream the event, and unlike the case with Melee a few years later, Brawl's stream was never reinstated. Nintendo's contempt for competitive play is something not seen by practically any other big-name game developer. It's common practice in the industry today for developers to bankroll big tournament pots, because it's fairly well understood that a healthy competitive scene contributes to a more engaging product for all players.
It really just makes sense that people having fun on the game? W for us! We made the game!
Competitors in most esports bask in $100,000 prize pools. Smash players have to act graciously for simply being allowed to play at all. Nintendo is not just indifferent to competitive Smash, oftentimes they are actively malicious. 2013 saw the release of Project M, a modded version of Brawl which combined its
Oh
existing
yeah, you
roster
can't
with
be
Melee's
doing that. You made the game more playable and fun. You did something with our game. No, you didn't. Delete it. Put it in the
Over the next
trash.
couple years,
Took you
Project
5
M-
years? Good. Light it aflame. Or meet our lawyers.
Version of
AKA your
Nintendo's.
maker.
Then-
/ destroyer.
of 2015, the mod was suddenly and mysteriously abandoned by both developers and tournament organizers. Years later, it was revealed that at the time, Nintendo was toying around with sponsoring an official competitive circuit, but mandated that Project M be discarded before moving forward. Despite support from major entities like Twitch and Red Bull, Nintendo strung the community along for 3 years before dumping the prospect altogether upon the release of
Whoa.
Smash Ultimate. Smash would never end up getting an official pro circuit, and Project M was sacrificed for nothing.
For
By the beginning of
nothing.
2020, the Smash community had finally secured enough funds to arrange their own competitive circuit independent of Nintendo. But well, some things are just never meant to work out. Even amidst the depths of the pandemic, the passion for competitive Smash still persisted through online tournaments. But even then, Nintendo had to rear its head and punish a community who had everything else taken from them. The Big House 2020 was cancelled because online play necessitated the use of a modded version of Melee run on an emulator. And so, the players of Melee were stripped of their last solitary means of competition.
What more can you take away from me?
The Smash community is generally not well liked by the majority of observers. Last year's firestorm of allegations and controversy among top community figures certainly didn't help. The public's perception of the esport has likely been tarnished beyond repair, and many people remain adamantly unsympathetic over the plight of competitive Smash. However, understanding Nintendo's treatment of its esports competitors provides us with insight into how they tend to respond to any conflict of interest with their fans. Even back in the days of MLG, what Nintendo did to the Smash community set the tone for how they would treat their most diehard supporters moving forward.
Emulation is a big no-no, I guess. I mean, usually... I thought emulation was totally legal, actually, but you're just not allowed to run games that you're not own. Isn't that the argument? I don't
As
know.
time marches on, video game hardware gradually degrades and stops functioning. Among would-be players, hardware deterioration creates an issue of accessibility. For many, the solution to this issue lies in emulation, and no company despises emulation more than Nintendo.
This is illegal, you know.
Oh my god.
The prevailing misconception among the general public that emulating games in and of itself is illegal. However, a series of court decisions during the 90s and early 2000s ruled that the act of emulation is totally permissible by law, upholding that video
Okay,
game
that's
companies
kinda
are
what
not
I thought.
entitled to a monopoly. Where the legal issues arise is the distribution of digital game files, which does fall into the realm of copyright
Yeah, you can't... Yeah.
infringement.
So those websites will get taken down pretty often, I think, but they're probably hosted in some crazy old hidden area under lock and key where the Ace Attorney man can't get them.
Market
It's
needs.
true.
Most game companies understand this and offer
Fuck
ample
'em a
opportunity
do,
for
not
consumers
play
to
it.
easily experience retro titles. Nintendo, on the other hand, despite being the most adamantly outspoken about emulation as theft, is noticeably lacking in providing any legal alternative to many of their titles. It's a deliberate strategy by Nintendo to artificially drive up demand. To make matters worse, Nintendo's official retro experience tends to lack many of the basic features that were available on emulators as far back as the 90s. Perhaps if the company spent as much effort improving their own retro offerings as they do litigating the passionate fans who make better alternatives, there wouldn't be as much of an underground market to litigate. Market is not even an accurate term, considering how practically all ROMs and emulators are distributed with no intention of earning revenue, but that doesn't stop Nintendo from suing many of these people.
Yeah, some of them might have ads on them, but those are the sketchy ones that suck. Most of them are just made out of the love of making them, for whatever reason.
Millions of dollars that they never made. It's widely understood among copyright experts that ROM libraries such as console classics are perfectly legal, since they lend out a limited supply of ROMs that each correspond to a physical copy that they own. However, despite taking every precaution they could, console classics still had to deal with Nintendo's bullying and intimidation. The Emularity Games library notably excludes Nintendo games from their collection because of the company's cutthroat reputation.
Yeah, the only time I can understand it is if you're like emulating stuff that's like still on sale or like released on their virtual platform or whatever. Stuff that's easily available within legal means, I guess. Fair game, but freaking everything else that is just out there, freaking 40 years old, forgotten, I mean...
For nonsense that is modern copyright legislation.
Who's protecting
so if
that?
you want to convince me of Nintendo's
The developers don't care.
Situation, you're gonna have to justify it with something a bit more compelling than...
That's how the law works.
Yeah, dude. Wasn't there a freaking Pokemon game where a guy worked like 10 years on it or some shit, and they got cease and desisted immediately when it was released? I forget what it was called, but it was just like Pokemon Epic Green version or some shit.
I've already talked about the
But they made like their own sprites and their own unique Pokemon and shit.
Of Project M, but that was simply a drop in the bucket compared to the immense scale of Nintendo's warpath against fan-made projects. In 2016, Nintendo issued cease and desist on over 500 fan games, two of which included the highly anticipated
Was that?
Pokemon.
Oh, that was the one I was thinking of. Uranium version, dude. I never freaking played it, but I just remember in like 2015, it was like just the craziest instance I had seen yet of Nintendo in action.
Uranium and AM2R. Both of these projects represented a labor of love that took developers thousands of hours of their own free time to complete, and Nintendo's response to all of that effort and talent was to stomp it into the dust.
Yeah.
It may be tough to understand why Nintendo is so ruthless about guarding their intellectual property, but the answer can be found in the company's history. Back in the 80s, Nintendo made it their mission to undo the industry mistakes which led to the crash. Consumers had lost faith in video games because the market had become flooded with low-quality cash grabs and bootlegs. Nintendo implemented their seal of quality as a necessary measure for consumers to distinguish their quality
I did always used to see this symbol. Do they still put this on stuff?
products from cheap knockoffs. Today, the industry has vastly changed, but Nintendo's primal fear of rogue imitators has never left them. It's a fear that can now be described as irrational and detrimental to the industry as a whole. Video games have long since surpassed film and music as the biggest entertainment industry in the world. Suffice to say, the gaming industry is no longer teetering on the brink of outright collapse from some teenager making a ROM hack. Since Nintendo's heyday, modding and fan-made adaptations have actually contributed to some of the most celebrated games of all time. Valve built their entire game library off a modded version of the Quake engine. Developer John Carmack released the source code for anyone to use, the fruits of which resulted in some of the most influential games of their era. Today, Valve has repaid the favor to the next generation of programmers who are allowed to buy and sell modded Valve games on their own platform. These days, it's safe to say that modding is not just an accepted...
I've always kind of wondered how that works, dude. Gary's mod? That's the freaking Skibbity toilet game. Just shooting, no walking. Okay, perfect. This was my immediate reaction when I saw these guys originally. I gotta shoot him in the face. I win. And he's stunting on him. But the characters are from Half-Life and Counter-Strike. It's so wacky.
It's relatively rare for modern game companies to police fans creating mods of their games, but it's nearly unthinkable for companies to police fans creating videos of their games.
Oh
so have
my
you ever
God.
noticed how most Nintendo YouTubers only seem to start popping into existence about 4 years ago?
Yeah, dude. Even this video is 2 years old, so he's probably still on the... Nintendo was probably already come around by then, but freaking... It took them a long time, and they were, like, claiming people's gameplay videos. I mean, I never actually had much problem with it when I did stuff, but it was pretty rare that I did stuff on, like, the Wii U and shit.
Well, there's a very important reason for that. Because in the
It's just crazy that it ever happened like that, dude.
Infeasible. Last year, Google
They're
Stadia
so
creative
dumb.
director Alex Hutchinson posted a tweet suggesting that streamers and content creators pay a fee to game publishers for the privilege
All these people were so insufferable.
of having others
But
watch
it was
them
a
play.
different time.
This post got absolutely ratioed out of the ballpark. I mean, really, what a totally asinine statement. Can you actually imagine how dystopian it would be if companies actually did this? Except, one company has done this, Nintendo. At one point, it was actually worse than even what this guy suggested. In 2013, Nintendo Content ID claimed all footage of their games on YouTube. If you used even a fraction of Nintendo gameplay, that video wouldn't earn you a dime.
You had to join their sketchy network where they took freaking 30% or 70% or however much. It really only made sense if your whole channel was Nintendo shit, because that was the only way you could monetize it. But freaking Yeah,
It
what a
turns out that
crazy
punishing everyone
time.
who
That
makes
doesn't
videos
exist anymore.
about your games is a good way to ensure that no one makes videos about your games. As
Yep.
YouTube Let's Plays exploded in popularity at around the same time, Nintendo began to realize that their decision was costing them millions in potential free advertising. So in 2015, they sheepishly restored content creators' ability to earn revenue, this time taking a 30% cut. However, in order to get your 70% share, you were forced to manually apply to their partner program so they could micromanage your channel and make sure that you didn't step out of line from their standards. This policy
Horrible. The worst idea. The worst.
brainer public relations tasks that seem to utterly escape them. If EA or Blizzard or Sony or Epic Games did just some of the things Nintendo do on a regular basis, you'd never hear the end of it. What makes Nintendo any different? How do they keep getting away with it?
They got Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Birdo, Mario Tennis.
Well, the main difference between Nintendo and all of these other companies comes down to one factor: the fans.
Go back and grow up. But I'm warning you, once you're grown up, you can never come back.
I understand that for some people, Nintendo is more than just some company that makes good games. Whole generations of people grew up
They're
with
like the
them.
Disney of video games, kind of.
Many saw
I love
Nintendo as a
Nintendo.
defining part of their childhood and have absorbed the company
It's just
and
their
its
business practices that are the worst.
characters as an integral
At
piece
least
of
they
their
were. I
identity.
mean, they've gotten better, I guess.
For some, Nintendo evokes profound nostalgia for simpler, happier days. For others, it represents a refuge from the abuse and torment of their reality.
Oh
You'd be
my.
hard-pressed to find any other brand that can summon such powerful feelings of vulnerable, youthful innocence.
Me
I'm not here to
stepdad's
disparage
home,
people
he's
for being
drunk
passionate
again.
about something they truly and unabashedly love, but recognizing the zealous loyalty
Games
of the Nintendo
fear.
fanbase is a necessary step in diagnosing the problem.
Haha, here's the problem.
After 40 years of making such beloved games,
Oh,
Nintendo
no.
has spawned a following of apostles who worship the company with religious dedication.
Oh no,
It's not enough
the
for them
Nintendo adults.
to simply engage with the
It's
products.
like a
The most
Disney
devout
adult, but the same.
Nintendo fans have an obligation to make their faith known to all who encounter them. Such ardent loyalty to some faraway corporation is highly abnormal, and it leads to highly abnormal outcomes. Nintendo is certainly aware of the immense goodwill which their customers share, and rather than reciprocate it, they have harnessed it, and are currently riding it all the way to the bank. They're confident that they can get away with almost anything, because a substantial portion of their audience have adopted the dogmatic belief that the company is incapable of sin. Recently, there have been prevailing discussions online about the toxicity of fandoms and stan culture, and while the same few notorious subcultures get brought up over and over again, I rarely see anyone mention the Nintendo fandom in these conversations. In my experience, the most extreme Nintendo fans are as psychotic and maladjusted as any other fandom, and I'm tired of pretending that they're not. I always imagine that Nintendo doesn't have to pay a PR team to run damage control because their fans will do it for them. It seems that no matter how low the company stoops, it will always have a human shield of fanboys lining up to make excuses for them. The most diehard fans are so quick to forget about the company's misdeeds that you'd think they have amnesia. At the end of last year, Nintendo got into some hot water. In the span of a few weeks, they shut down Melee's biggest online event, shut down a Splatoon tournament when those players stood in solidarity with the Melee players, and shut down the charitable sale of Joy-Cons honoring the late Etika. 3 days later, they unveiled Sephiroth in Ultimate, and all the backlash magically disappeared. When I pointed this out on Twitter, I spent the next week getting bombarded with apoplectic responses of how much of an idiot I was for thinking that Nintendo fans would actually express displeasure to the company. Wow, what an awful take. How foolish of me. When have people ever protested the company's recent actions by pressing dislike on their totally unrelated YouTube videos?
And perhaps accomplish more if they could just be spineless, pathetic consumers. Damn,
If
got
anyone's
him.
true product on
Paul
screen is good
Blart
enough,
for
they can charge $20
NES.
a year for a barely functional online service that was free on prior
$35 a
systems.
month?
They can charge $80 for controllers with such significant defects that they make many games borderline unplayable.
But
can
they make the funny plumber game and the movie.
force customers to purchase an additional console if they want to create a second island in Animal Crossing. At what point will Nintendo cross the line to where the customer is no longer willing to get ripped off? Fortunately, Nintendo has the most loyal fans in the world, and that line is nowhere in sight.
Dude, it's freaking true. They got more money than sense, and they like the cute characters. I really don't know. I'm not above it. I freaking bought Pokemon at least 12 times in my life. Dude, shout out EmpLemon. This was a really good video. How do you guys feel about freaking Nintendo? Is your life a video game? Are your haters really lame? I love Nintendo, even if they're idiots sometimes. Nobody's perfect. I hope they make a Donkey Kong movie next. Thank you guys for watching this reaction video. Peace out.